Coming to you from an abandoned asylum in the woods. It's the season finale of the Littlepodcast of Horrors with James, Christina, and Chris.
Season finale.
Whoop, whoop.
The finale of all finales. Are you ready?
I wouldn't go that far. We're not ending the show.
No, I guess I was just...
We don't all die at the end.
Maybe we do. Maybe we were all dead to begin with, like the Sixth Sense.
Your mom was
Oh my
dead to begin with.
gosh. Bruce Willis, is that you?
I mean, yeah, she was.
So, I'm drinking another Galaxy cocktail because it was delicious. And since we're back for more George Van Tassel, I'm back for more Galaxy cocktails.
Yeah.
Well, I'm keeping
I'm still
it
drinking
wholesome.
Blue Wing.
I'm keeping it wholesome, and I'm having a big glass of milk in my Batman cup.
You're doing our season finale with bat milk.
Yeah,
It does a body justice.
that's right. It does. Tastes like vengeance.
I hate milk.
So last time on Little Podcast of Horrors, I'm going to go over this really quick because we have a lot to squeeze into this last episode.
I've got this. George Van Tassel has a lot of alien sex.
Nailed it.
These are diplomatic relations, though. It's important.
Diplomatic sex.
Yes.
So we're revisiting a character from season 1, episode 3, Hot Fuzz Space, George Van Tassel, who in that episode I briefly mentioned before going on into the topic proper of that episode, but made a side note of that guy would make an episode of his own. 2 years later, here I am. Here's that episode, part 2. So last episode, we talked about how George Van Tassel was BFS with this guy named Frank who blew himself up with dynamite, and they moved into a hole in the ground under a rock called Giant Rock in the desert, and now he's met an alien from Venus. You're all caught up.
Although it
Wow.
may just be Venice.
Yes.
Six
It's
Saints.
just
All right.
an awkward confusion. Okay, before we go back to George, I want to very briefly tell you about another couple of contemporaries. Because George Van Tassel, curiously enough, was not the only person contacted by aliens during these couple of years. You know, in 1950, we started with 1952 last episode when he talked to some Venusians from Venus.
Right.
So, as we mentioned, Roswell is happening around the same era, but completely unrelated, apparently. What's not completely unrelated, at least very similar in story, are a couple of other California desert alien visits. One is a man by the name of George Adamski.
Another George.
Another George. Aliens like the Georges. So, just
It's a
going to touch
common
on these
name.
couple of guys real quick before we return to what?
He just said it's a common name.
Oh, yeah. That's
Like,
right.
yeah, that's true.
So it wasn't just George Van Tassel having these strange visits. That same year, 1952, Lutbun, who we talked about last episode, rewind. Almost derailed that. Wasn't just George Van Tassel who had alien contact in 1952 when he telepathically spoke with the alien Lutbun. Another George Domsky, encountered another telepath from Venus, Orthon, near Desert Center, California. Orthon sported a belted jumpsuit, a tan, and looked Nordic with shoulder-length blonde hair.
So very similar
Hello
to
there.
what George Van Tassel
Hello there.
was describing.
I am Orthon. How are you doing? I am from the stars.
Okay, this is neat though, because when did the Battle of Los Angeles take place? It was in the 50s, wasn't it?
What? The Battle of Los Angeles.
Yeah, where they saw all these lights in the sky and like the military started blasting because they thought they were being attacked.
1942.
That was 1942. Okay,
10 years,
never mind.
10 years earlier.
Never mind. I thought it was in the 50s. Okay.
That's an episode to itself.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So yeah, so George Adamski and George Van Tassel do not know each other. And so Van Tassel's over in Giant Rock in the Mojave Desert near Landers, and Adamski is over in the desert in Desert Center, both in California, but two different parts of California.
Mm-hmm.
Neither of the two know each other.
Neat.
Anyway, Orthon also warned of the dangers of atomic tests, stating the radiation from Earth, because of these atomic tests, would spread across the solar system to become everybody's problem.
Wow. We are really fucking stuff up.
Yeah, when Venus has to send someone to go, like, guys, knock it off.
Please stop.
We've been trying to ignore you, but this is too much. So, as it turns out, we learn from Orthon that the Venusians follow, quote unquote, universal law. And they have a suspiciously Christian-like, quote unquote, creator of all. But anyway, all that said, I'm not going to linger on Adamski because we have a lot to talk about with Van Tassel, but I wanted to mention him because very curious contemporary experience. And I guess the Venusians just really like Southern California. Can't blame them.
Good climate. I don't know. I mean, if they're coming from Venus, where it's just fucking hot and there's volcanoes
the
everywhere.
Hellscape of Venus.
Basically.
They're just coming for our beaches.
Yeah.
So we're a vacation spot.
Well, these dudes are out here in the desert meditating in this crazy heat. Maybe they're the only ones that the Venusians can get in touch with.
Right.
It is suspicious though, because I feel like both Georges are probably white guys, are they not?
I don't know, but I'm gonna wager a pretty safe guess that yes, they are, surely.
And then the aliens they described are super Aryan,
right?
White.
Right, we got a theme going.
Yeah.
So in 1954, 2 years later, a gentleman by the name of Truman Bethram, he was a day laborer and a fortune teller on the side.
Oh, fuck
he
yeah.
He had his own firsthand account and his book titled Aboard a Flying Saucer. A ship landed once again in the desert near a construction work site where he and his crew were working, doing construction stuff as you do.
Okay.
According to Truman, the pilot was and I'm taking this from Truman, but the pilot was an attractive, petite, humanoid female by the name of Captain Aura Rains.
Oh, yeah. She sounds hot.
Yeah.
Captain Aura Rains.
I like how you're getting turned on by the simplest description was petite humanoid female. And you're like, oh, break me up that.
Oh, hold up. It's also
She's
the
petite
name.
and humanoid?
No, it's the name.
It's also the name. Captain Aura Rains. Like, that sounds
Aura.
like Jerry Ryan. I don't know. Like, she sounds hot.
I'd just be like, take the reins, Captain Rains.
So, I'm glad I
She's gonna
didn't
ride
describe you
me till I
attractive and
spit.
humanoid. It's like,
humanoid, that got me
too.
too.
Right there. Petite, humanoid, boom, I'm in.
I mean, in the first episode, you said aliens, and I said sex time. So obviously, I have a weird thing going on mentally.
And if you're not paying close enough attention, one could almost think that you said oral reins. Captain, oh my God, there's the porno. Captain Oral Reigns, we meet again from planet Venus. I shall begin negotiations with. I will begin negotiations with you immediately. They may become hostile and aggressive.
We're hoping.
Aura Reigns was visiting from the planet Clarion.
James is so done with the shit.
I know. He's like, can we move on? You fucking weirdos.
She's from Clarion, okay?
Okay, where's Clarion?
I don't know.
Oh, come on, man.
It's in space somewhere.
I expect a star map with these episodes so that I can see where everybody's coming from.
There's so much coming that I don't know where it's coming from, okay? We can't, well, and by the way, you're not going to get it on get it so easily on a star map because we are Earthlings, we can't see Clarion because it's hidden behind the sun. Orbits be damned, I guess, but it's hidden behind the sun, even as we move around it.
Okay.
That's strange.
Just go with it. It's hidden behind the sun, okay?
I'm bought in, so it's fine.
It's space mystery stuff. Our primitive minds, we don't get it.
Listen, I'm gonna believe whatever Captain Aura Reigns tells me.
Fair. So Truman and Captain Aura Reigns met about 10 times, usually at lunch.
Uh-huh.
Afternoon delight, you know?
Just love that they had lunch dates.
I'll bet you I can guess what he was eating.
Oh,
A turkey sandwich, because
yeah,
honestly, he was not Captain Aura Reigns type. You know, he was not on her level.
But you are.
Completely out of his field, man. So Captain Rains told Truman that Clarion was a utopia, free of quote unquote war, divorce, and taxes.
They had to name divorce.
I was like, that's very specific. It's a
libertarian.
utopia.
I know.
They don't have war, taxes, or divorces.
Right.
So everything is perfect. Or I'd be like, are you in trouble? Blink if you need help.
Right?
We're happy because we don't divorce.
Well, since as you say that, it actually turns out that Clarionites have 1,000-year lifespan, and they were good Christians.
No way.
Oh my
Yes.
God.
Come the fuck on.
They were good Christians on the planet Clarion, free of war, divorce, and taxes.
Okay, I'm done with this Christian propaganda.
It's libertarian Clarion Christian. I am Christian, and I'm done with this Christian propaganda. So Aura offered Truman a ride on her spaceship, but she changed her mind and ghosted him, and he never saw her again.
I mean, she found someone hotter. Like, what can you say? I don't know.
Well, from that day forward, Truman was obsessed with Aura for the rest of his life, which apparently ruined his second marriage.
They don't have divorce, but we still do, and it ruined his marriage encountering this alien.
I'm sorry. Every time he says it, all I just hear is oral. He was obsessed with oral, and it ruined his second marriage.
So when I was researching this came across as the quick footnote as I just delivered it. Like it's not just me just passing over this. Like literally, that's it. That's all you get. It is just he was so obsessed with her, it ruined his second marriage, which I have questions.
Did anybody else encounter Aura Reigns?
Not that I know of.
I'm waiting for these guys to like interact with the same alien, but they don't know each other. That's what I want to hear.
I want to know what happened to his first marriage. Like it ruined his second marriage. Like what happened to anyway? There's a story there, is what I'm saying. It's just once you've had Clarion, you can't go back.
He was a workaholic from that first marriage. I think they were too young. They weren't ready. He worked too much. It just fell apart.
So to end his story, Truman moved to Landers. Remember, Giant Rock is near Landers.
Okay, yeah.
Truman moved to Landers after attending one of George Van Tassel's conventions.
Okay.
What do I mean by conventions? Well, if you remember from... Oh, by the way, before I start this train going, I promised in the first episode we were going to have a lot of crossovers with other episodes across all of our previous seasons.
Yeah.
And then give you a little ding every time it happens.
As I say, we haven't had any dings. What's going on?
That's because we're saving them all for here. This episode is going to be digging off the hook.
You mean mooing? Because I'm going to moo.
Yes, mooing. By dinging, I clearly mean mooing. Anyway, what do I mean by conventions?
Chris.
So, if you listen to and remember 2 years ago, our season 1, episode 3, Hot Fuzzy Space.
Moo.
We're really doing this.
Okay, no, I won't torture everybody. Chris is like, I'm already mentally editing this out, so it does not matter.
I mentioned these conventions in passing in that episode because it segued into the topic of that episode. But here, revisiting these conventions, beginning later in 1953, a year after Van Tassel met Suganda, George begins hosting weekly Friday night meditation and channeling sessions in his subterranean home.
Oh, dude, I would so be into that.
Meditating and channeling aliens underground.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that sounds like a good time, dude. I want to do that.
How do you spend your Friday night? Channeling aliens underground.
Oh, man, I gotta do something like this so that I can report back and tell you guys all about it.
Yes,
Because that
please.
sounds so fun.
Well, these weekly Friday night meditation channeling sessions resulted in contacting even more aliens.
Woohoo!
And George would call these communications, quote unquote, thought transference.
Mm.
That makes sense.
So from 1953 to 1957, George kicks off what would be the first of what becomes annual spacecraft conventions at Giant Rock Airport. Special guests would include a whole bunch of other UFO alien contactees and quote unquote pioneers in quote unquote anti-gravity and primary energy research. Our previously mentioned Truman and Adamski were among others who would become lecturers at these conventions. Hence why I mentioned them. So visitors to these annual conventions would claim that Giant Rock was located at a spiritual vortex where ley lines intersect. Now remember, this was a Native American holy site, just side note.
Mm-hmm.
Ley lines would intersect here, channeling mystic and or psychic energy.
Do they still have these conventions?
No, but we will be ending this episode with what's going on there today.
Okay, cool.
So as time marches on, 1957 all the way to 1977, tens of thousands of people attend these annual conventions for like 2 decades. They get really big. And you might remember I talked about that in Hot Fuzz Space. So depending on the year during this time period and the source that you cite, the crowds would range anywhere from 1,200 people to 11,000. And in 1959 was when 11,000 people showed up for the convention. It's a big deal.
Whoa.
It's a lot of people.
Yeah. So these conventions actually evolved the big festivals of music, lectures by contactees, UFO enthusiasts, and weird science aficionados.
So the height of this is kind of prior to the alien abductions that got super big, right?
Yes. Like if you remember, I talked about in that season 1 episode that this is the sort of like 60s, 70s era.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of aliens is very positive. Like it's really hip to get to meet some aliens.
And then abductions happen and they're like, oh shit.
Right.
Maybe we don't like this as much. Okay, sorry.
So actually you asked a question back in season 1. You asked if L. Ron Hubbard knew George Van Tassel, to which I said no, and I was wrong. L. Ron Hubbard was actually a regular at these conventions.
What a shocker.
Yes. Love it.
And
Regular
James,
attendee.
would you like to
Of course he
remind
was.
our audience who L. Ron Hubbard is?
He started Scientology.
He was a science fiction writer, and he started Scientology.
Yeah.
As you do. Anyway, George Van Tassel publicly demonstrated his ability to channel aliens during these conventions. Continuing his whole like meditation sessions. A particularly good one took place during the 1958 convention. And I say it was a particularly good one because he had a little bit of trouble in that one. Because he had some trouble tuning into the right alien?
Uh-oh.
So this is quoting George at that year's convention. Now who am I talking to? Well, somebody else keeps butting in. Confound it. You keep switching around on me. Let's settle on who is doing the talking tonight.
I am nuts. I bring you love.
What?
I am nuts.
Now, remember I had told you Nut was one of the list of names of the aliens that called last episode. So he has trouble tuning in, and then he finally gets tuned in on one of them, and in comes Nuts to bring us love.
So his nuts are bringing love.
Nut, singular.
Nut.
K-N-U-T, sir.
Whatever. When you said butting in, do you remember back in the day when we had like landlines and there'd be like 2 or 3 phones that were throughout the house, and we'd be all talking on the phone, and then your parent would like pick up to make a call, not realizing you're on the line. You'd be like, "I'm on the phone, Mom."
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I would have thought it would have been like that,
Well, it kind of sounds like when we do the Estes method, like
yes,
all those spirits are coming through, and like it gets really confusing. You're like, who the fuck am I talking to?
One at a time, please.
So during the same period of 57 to 77, George begins construction of a new project, his master vision, the integration. We're going to talk about that more in just a little bit, leading up to it. That aside, at one point, George later declared he'd launch his campaign for the presidency via one of these conventions.
Oh.
And you may recall from your U.S. history, there was never a President George Van Tassel.
Nope.
He was at the time that he made that announcement, he was going to make the announcement. He was personally convinced that his alien pals would ensure his victory. But bad news, interest in these space conventions, you're asking, are they still going?
Mm-hmm.
Interest in these conventions starts to wane later in the 1970s. So, never mind.
I mean, you think about the 1970s, Americans on a whole were becoming horribly disillusioned towards a lot of things. So that's not surprising.
Right. And so, just a side note, George ends up selling off the airport, not the whole property, just the airport part in 1975.
Okay.
So it's not so, all of this ain't so big anymore is what all of this is pointing to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now let's insert a little side story that I found interesting about George. If we go back to 1963 in September, George had another in-person alien encounter. This alien drove a car into the airport instead of showing up in a ship. He drove a Cadillac.
But he was really a transformer.
It makes sense.
I just love that he showed up balling in a Cadillac, driving his caddy. So to quote George, they were walking among us on the earth all the time, and we don't realize it. Hence, showing up nonchalant in a Cadillac. And as we mentioned last episode, he said they were very human looking. You couldn't tell them apart, at first glance. So since the guy looked human, he had to prove his alien creds to George and company. And he did so by vanishing from sight, then reappearing 3 times in a row, all right before George's eyes and those of 19 other witnesses, according to George.
I was to say, but only George is saying anything about it. Yeah. Okay.
So why did the alien show up driving a Cadillac to talk to George? Well, he was just doing a favor. He was just showing up to bring George some more information on electronic magnetic research.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of which, if you've listened to any handful of my previous episodes, why is everything always about electromagnetic research? I've noticed this is like a theme across everything.
There's something spiritual about it, though, because I feel like it entangles with like psychic stuff too.
It does. And any time, like if anything I've learned from my other episodes, anytime we start deciding to research electromagnetic, electromagnets, anytime we start playing with those, we always get in trouble. Just like we found out in the Philadelphia Experiment, season 1, episode 20.
Moo.
Well, the Philadelphia Experiment and season 1, episode 20, the Montauk Conclusion.
Moo.
2 moos, that's right. Both of which dealt with science gone awry when we were researching electromagnetic stuff. Stop it. Just leave it alone. I happen to remember in that fateful season 1 episode where I mentioned in passing that Jesus was an alien. Okay, good. Because George, at some point in his back and forth with various aliens from Venus, learned that Mary, Jesus' mother, was an alien who, quote unquote, volunteered through assignment to visit Earth and give birth to Jesus.
Wait, I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? Mary was an alien?
Yes.
Okay.
As was Jesus. But Mary came to Earth. She agreed to the assignment to come to Earth to give birth to Jesus. Which, by the way, I say Earth, but in the original quote, it's Shan, S-H-A-N, because the aliens actually refer to Earth as Shan. That's their name for our planet.
Okay.
Shan, Sean, however you pronounce it. I'm not up to speed on my Venusian pronunciation, unfortunately.
You can't just like look that up on Google, the Venusian pronunciations.
Right. So, in fact, expanding on that point that I raised in that first episode, Mary and Jesus were members of the Adamic race, who were space people of God's pure creation.
Okay. This sounds like it's gonna get like weird, like eugenics-y. Are we going toward this? Is this gonna
Eugenics?
Yeah, like, is this gonna be like Aryan Nazi stuff? Like, what is happening here?
No more than usual. No eugenics.
Okay.
So, in fact, you may recall from the Hot Fuzz of Space episode that Jesus, like another major alien figure whose name escapes me at the moment, Jesus was often regarded as one of the enlightened ones who had access to the universal mind of God. That was a whole thing I talked about way back then. So I have to wonder that given this revelation, somebody should probably tell Rael that his half-brother Jesus is from Venus. Because remember that in season 2, episode 3, Rael Elohim's Excellent Adventure.
Yeah, they're brothers.
And episode 6, Rael Elohim's Bogus Journey.
Ding, 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 ding.
They were half brothers. In fact, remember that Rael was also visited in person and was also given messages by aliens from, in his story, the race that created humanity. Also, remember that episode, they talked about Jesus living on the aliens that talked to Rael said that Jesus was still around and living on their planet, along with other pals such as Moses and Elijah.
Oh, so they got beamed up.
Right. And also remember, Rael had similar atomic related prophecy, except he talked about the age of apocalypse that began with the drop of the first A-bomb. So again, if you want to freshen up on that, go back to those 2 episodes on Rael, but there's like very curious similarity between those encounters and that story of alien Jesus versus this one with George Van Tassel. Oh, and the 3 wise men, in the story of the birth of Jesus.
Yeah.
Aliens. So those 3 wise men / aliens, they followed Mary's spaceship to Earth. That spaceship, the name of that spaceship was the Star of Bethlehem. They followed the spaceship, the Star of Bethlehem, to the site of Jesus' birth on Earth.
This is a lot more fun than like normal Bible stuff.
All I can think of is Mel Brooks's Jews in Space.
Oh my God.
Just the literal, Jewish star spaceship he did.
Oh my gosh.
Anywho, by the way, anytime you encounter the word angel in the Bible, that's a misspelling of the word alien, per George Van Tassel. So glad to clear that up.
Thanks, George.
So back to that 1964 interview that I started talking about in the last episode. Jack, the interviewer, asked George if he's actually proposing that he's a sort of modern Moses bringing a new word from God, because this is kind of maybe more bordering on some blasphemy, right?
Right.
To which George replies,
"Well, I don't say that, Jack. I say that what is occurring now has occurred before. There's many records of these ships landing throughout history, clear back into Sanskrit. And there are records in the 1898 Chicago newspapers that covered the front page for 3 days of a big ship setting over Chicago."
What?
right? Like, wait, what? What did you just drop on the side there? So,
I need more of this.
by the way, that last part is true. It's been referred to as the airship hysteria of 1896 to 1897. And boy, is that another episode altogether.
Please tell me you're going to do that episode.
Of course I'm going to do it.
Ah,
Next season, man. It's coming.
I'm so excited.
I like how this episode that I took on to try to fill in a, by the way, we should talk about this in an old episode is resulting in more of, by the way, we should talk about this moments that I'm not going to wait 2 years to do this time.
You just don't hear that much about like UFO stuff before the like mid-century, basically, like 1940s before.
It's a whole thing.
And I'm so excited. Okay.
It's a never-ending cycle.
It is. So anyway, George continues responding to claims that, from potential critics that he's reinterpreting biblical text. So he later says in 1976, to quote George, "I, for one, am not making a religion out of anything. I am only trying to explain in this time what caused the superstitious people of another time to record those events to the best of their knowledge, when they did not understand the faintest scientific thing about what caused a cloud or a corona of fire. I am only trying to explain phenomena that occurred then in the present understanding of modern electrical science now. I am trying to prove scientifically that religion is a reality instead of an intangible superstitious myth. I am not changing anything that religious books say. I am only explaining what caused the phenomena that was not understood by the people then." It's also, by the way, George would also claim that a select group of people with the correct, quote unquote, vibratory body aura will one day be taken to heaven during the rapture. Space rapture, baby.
Space rapture.
Rapture.
Way cooler than the regular rapture because it's in space.
So later in 1976, in George's book, When Stars Look Down, he would write, "Whether one believes in Christ or not is not the point. The point is that the conditions of Earth require outside intervention, and the time conforms to the requirements of prophecy." Later, page 37, if you want to read along, if you get your hands on the book, "This mass pickup of people will take place very soon, prior to the planet's rebalancing on new poles. This cataclysm will wipe out the destructive mammon lovers who will be left on the surface." Later again, page 141, "The time is short. You are either an instrument of God or a pawn of the devil. Jesus is about to land amidst you. Are you ready to be taken up, or are you one who be left?"
I don't like this like threatening thing. It's like weird.
This is a
weird
wilder
vibes,
version
bro.
of the Left Behind books, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's weird vibes, bro.
All right. Anyway, let's move on from George's Bible stuff to another topic. So while these space conventions of his were really booming, they're at the peak of their popularity, George begins construction of what I briefly mentioned earlier, his grand vision, the integration, aka some people often refer to it as the Integratron. It's hard to say 3 times fast. More commonly referred to as the integration. You remember that Saganda last episode shared with him the formula of the integration, yada, yada, yada. So this grand project of George's, his construction and the integration, it was to become a center for rejuvenation and time travel research.
I feel like I know where this is going.
It was based on designs George received from those Venusian architects telepathically. The construction project turned out to be an 18-year endeavor. George based the design of the integration on several inspirations. Ready to increase that counter?
Go for it.
Inspiration number 1, Moses' tabernacle, which he claimed was an ion generator. Oh,
wow.
Do you mean sort of like the one that housed the Ark of the Covenant from our season 3, episode 3, Ark of the Covenant, aka Pew Pew Death Laser?
Moo.
Like that. His second inspiration was the Great Pyramid.
Moo.
Also in season 3 that we covered. And it makes sense since we already know from our episode that the Great Pyramid was a futuristic power plant. From our episode, season 3, episode 7, The Mystery of the Great Pyramids.
Mm-hmm.
And then his third inspiration, Tesla's writings.
I knew it.
Oh, moo.
Tesla.
So I wonder if George got his hands on some of those lost writings we talked about in season 3, episodes 17, 18, and 19, Nikola Tesla, Alien Hunter, Nazi Flying Saucers, and the Tim Swartz interview. Ding-a-ding-a-ding.
Ding.
Okay, in the pyramid one, did we talk about the river that actually ran right up against the pyramids?
Yeah, we did.
Briefly. We talked about how that was used for energy generation.
Yes, and that's how they got, that's how they solved the mystery of how the pyramids were built, because the rivers were right up against it. They're like, they just brought them on boats.
For that.
Sorry.
So anyway, we're going to come back to Tesla shortly, as we always do.
Yes.
Tesla always turns up.
And then his fourth inspiration was just telepathic instructions directly from Saganda.
Of course.
So if we assume for a moment that all that I just cited was a bunch of baloney, then for the naysayers, what might you presume actually inspired the construction? Well, PBS Southern California, to be specific, they surmised that the real inspiration was more than what they called an amalgam of arcane interests, including what they concluded to be mesmerism, which is basically animal magnetism, in short. The idea of mesmerism, again, super, super brief, but basically it's an invisible force possessed by all living creatures that may or may not actually be a vital bodily fluid of some kind that responds to magnetism and may or may not involve lightsaber battles.
What?
I just threw that in
there super fast. Like, what?
Well, I was talking about like an invisible force possessed by all living creatures.
The Force.
I'm just saying. Okay, so Tesla. A lot of the integration's design was inspired by George Littlepodcast and Nikola Tesla. Littlepodcast created his multiple wave oscillator in 1923, and he later authored the book The Secret of Life, Electricity, Radiation in Your Body in 1929, where, quote unquote, cells from living organisms behave as tiny radio transmitters and receivers. So his oscillator manipulated this concept to cure various ills, such as, for example, cancer. Its main components, 2 big copper Tesla coils. By the way, do you happen to remember that Tesla publicly told the world that he was also contacted by aliens?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Funny that.
Wasn't it even didn't we even talk about the fact that at one point they speculated that maybe he was an alien?
From Venus.
From Venus.
Okay, so around this same time frame, George also founds the Ministry of Universal Wisdom and its associated college, which I talked about in the Hot Fuzz Space. So the Ministry of Universal Wisdom was a non-sectarian, nonprofit organization dedicated to religious and scientific research. You may recall that I had previously said that they researched UFOs and they interviewed contactees, and on the side they did some healing arts, as you do. You may also recall that I explained that we learned through them that they taught how to connect to the quote-unquote universal mind of God, which would enable you to evolve into an enlightened form, much the likes of other notable aliens such as Jesus and someone else whose name evades me. Meanwhile, George begins publishing his book titled The Proceedings of the College of Universal Wisdom, and writes, The Proceedings of College of Universal Wisdom, not a book, pamphlet, like a newsletter or something, like regular thing. But he would also write 5 books on time travel and rejuvenation because he's a busy boy. It's not enough that he's building the integration. He has to write books and a newsletter and whole 9 yards. Found a college.
I want to read these time travel books.
Typical overachiever.
Those books are out there. You can indeed get them and read them.
Oh, I'm going to do that.
I'm going to read them, figure them out, and we're going to start time traveling.
Yeah.
But only to the past. I ain't going to the future.
His many topics throughout these 5 books include a sprinkling of esoteric philosophies, such as, for example, theosophy, and a bit of a sort of Christian revisionist ufology that seemed to include maybe a touch of Scientology and a touch of Mormonism, just for good measure.
He's like, I'm trying to bring everybody in.
So wait. I just said esoteric philosophies. That sounds like a topic for Dr. Sledge, who we interviewed in season 3, episode 4.
Moo.
Ding.
All right. So the integration.
Mm-hmm.
The integration.
The integration today is 3 miles south of Giant Rock, 20 miles north of Joshua Tree National Park. The project, remember I said it was 18 years to build. It cost over $200,000, 100% funded by donations solicited via George's newsletter entitled The Proceedings and his various speaking engagements. So this was crowdfunded before crowdfunding was a thing. Howard Hughes, who we mentioned in the previous episode, was actually a major donor to this thing. George referred to the integration as a tabernacle and claimed it would reverse aging by essentially extending the human lifespan 20 to 50 more years. He also claimed it would serve as an anti-gravity device and or time travel device, and it would generate free and unlimited energy. It's like a Swiss Army knife of a building this guy has.
Real.
To quote George, the integration is a machine, a high voltage electrostatic generator that would supply a broad range of frequencies to recharge the cell structure. That's in his words. Basically, he believed if humanity could live just that much longer, just those few additional decades, we could gain the wisdom we needed to save our race, save the planet. We just need to live a little longer, and then we can fix all that climate change stuff.
I don't know. That's what these billionaires are trying to do, and they're just really burning everything in their path to get it. It's really not helping anybody.
The more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah.
So the integration is actually this domed building that's 38 feet high, 55 feet in diameter. I'm sharing a picture with you. And it has 16 sides. It's constructed entirely of wood so as not to interfere with conduction. So it has 16 glued and laminated spines that are all held in place by 1 ton of concrete at the apex. It has no nails, no screws, no metal whatsoever. So if you remember me talking about ley lines last episode, the integration is located at an intersection of powerful geomagnetic forces, which the building's geometry, as that dome structure, concentrates and amplifies for cell rejuvenation. So if you look at that picture again, and we'll share it out to our social media and stuff so everyone can see it. There, you see that big old ring kind of circling around the building? So that external ring was mounted with 64 aluminum collectors, and it was designed to act as a Tesla machine. So the idea is that the ring is a giant capacitor that would collect up to 50,000 volts of static electricity from the air in order to charge the human body. static electricity. That their ring would spin, moved by jets of air, to generate an electrostatic energy field and direct that field into a stator, or massive dish, if you will, that was located inside the building. That dish would then create a massive positive ion field that then would in turn go into copper Tesla coils downstairs in the building to reverse it into a negative ion field. The ring, as you see in the picture, is still there. It does not spin.
Oh.
It was supposed to. So anyway, get all that? Negative ion fields, positive ion fields, you get rejuvenated.
Yeah, totally.
Sure.
Tesla coils. Science. I totally know everything I just said. So George's vision that once this thing was operational, he would have participants basically put on white suits and then pass through the lower floor of the building while being exposed to quote unquote electromagnetic vibrations via that negative ion field, and then they would exit the rear door. So basically, they're not even stopping to pause. They just walk in the front, through the building, right out the back. Bada bing, bada boom, you're rejuvenated. So instead of following, I said it was inspired by Littlepodcast, who was in turn inspired by Tesla. So instead of following Littlepodcast's design, which involves sitting between two Tesla coils, Van Tassel instead just had him walk through the building. It's completely mobile. So, by the way, supposedly, various scientists across the years who come by to do science stuff, supposedly, their how do you pronounce this? Magnetometer. I don't know. Let's get with magnetometer. That sounds classy. Anyway,
Magneto.
those doohickeys would show big spikes in the Earth's magnetic field smack in the dead center of the integration.
Oh, neat.
Okay, so I gave you those 4 things that inspired Tassel to have this thing built.
Yep, Christina Mood 4 times.
And Christina Mood 3 times. The 4th one was the telepathic communication. Just 3 moves. So the actual guy who drafted up the architectural plans was an architect from Los Angeles by the name of Howard Payton Hess, who was not an alien. And he would comment rather curiously in an interview, to quote Hess, "No little space people stood at my elbow and whispered in my ear. But when I finished the job, Van Tassel told me, they surely must have been guiding you on this. It's exactly what we want." That said, Hess did say later that he actually did hear, quote unquote, voices purporting to be those of space people giving messages through Van Tassel's vocal cords.
Wait. Okay. Okay. What?
When Van Tassel talks, it's just the aliens talking through him. Come on, get with the program. Even the architect got it.
I mean, he got it. Yeah. I'm not as smart, so I don't know.
Right. Okay. I referenced that book earlier where I cited some specific pages. That book is titled When Stars Look Down. So going back to that book on page 177, we get a little peek into what was George's bit of an ego.
What?
So
No.
Remember I said he liked to embellish just a little bit. So to quote George, "It's a strange thing that George is involved in so many firsts. Maybe this is where the expression evolved of, let George do it." Here we have George Crowell's research tied in with George Littlepodcast's principles being extended by George Van Tassel. After all, George Washington was our first president, and Nikola Tesla was financed by George Westinghouse. Nikola Tesla's discovery has made Westinghouse what it is today. Then there is the contrast of opposites, because GE, OR, GE, is GE twice with an OR in between. And Westinghouse's largest competitor is General Electric, or GE. And further, in letter expression of meanings, GE means generate energy. You get all that?
Nailed it.
That felt like a stretch.
I just love that he sat down and thought through all of this step by step.
Yeah, that's wild.
It totally makes sense.
Duh.
Duh, the gadoy. You
Yes.
asked in the last episode about that time travel topic.
Yes.
I got your answer.
Yay!
So going back to PBS Southern California, They argued that people relating the integration to any kind of time travel misunderstood the message. They thought that the integration just prolongs life, in a sense, undoing the effects of time and gravity on the body. So not really time travel, just kind of reversing your aging. Except they got it wrong.
Like
We're
always.
about to hear an interview. We're about to hear interview audio of George himself talking very clearly and very specifically about time travel.
Yeah.
Remember I said Saganda gave George an equation for the integration telepathically?
Yes.
George's story about those telepathic instructions varied over time. So at one point, he would say it was a 17-page equation secretly tested in Chicago. Or at another point, if we're going by what George said in that 1964 interview, Saganda verbally stated a far simpler version. F equals 1 over T, with F for frequency and T for time. So this is the audio from the interview. The formula for a time machine. Oh, sorry. So in the interview, Jack asked the formula for a time machine. George answers, F equals 1 over T. Jack asks, F equals 1 over T. George replies, F being frequency and time being time. Jack asks, this enables me to go back to the time of Caesar's armies conquering Britain, which George replies, well, it would enable a mathematician to work this out. Yes.
Okay, Chris, you heard it.
Okay, frequency equals
Get on it.
1 over time. I mean, I'm not a mathematician at all. In fact, I took college algebra 3 times.
I believe in you. You can do this.
Okay.
You can do it. By the way, Jack, the interviewer, Jack rightly asks why this equation hasn't broken out like E equals MC squared did. Why haven't we all heard of that one? To which George replied that, well, it's the same reason the U.S. government hasn't revealed that they've been flying anti-gravity ships since 1954, or that there's a base in one of the moon's craters. That's why.
Okay.
Thanks for clearing that up, George.
Just go talk to BMW.
Get it.
Right?
Ding.
So,
Moo.
so we're not going to talk about the secret moon crater base? Screw it. We're going to talk about the secret moon crater base. Even though it has nothing to do with this topic, we can't not talk about the secret moon crater base. So there in the middle of that interview, George just whips out this photo of this supposed base in the moon's Gassendi crater, which is somewhere around the Mare Humorum Sea, if you know your moon geography.
Who doesn't know their moon geography?
We didn't know Venice was in Italy earlier, so I don't think that we know moon geography.
It's 55 miles long and oval shaped. The photo was taken by the Palomar Observatory. George says that the observatory, will not comment on it. So, okay. But George goes on in that interview when he whips out the photo. He explains how the lines crossing the crater in that photo are actually tubes, and then points out what he says are 3 large dome structures. And I'll share that photo with you guys and on our social media. Just spoiler, it's not a great photo. It's 1964 footage. You're not going to glean a lot from it. But the aliens...
It looks like a brain.
Yeah, but it's supposedly a photo of a crater with the alien base in it. The aliens use this base to resupply their ships, so it's an intergalactic gas station. So, what were we talking about? And the equation. Right, we were talking about equation.
Okay.
Before the whole secret
F equals 1 over T, James.
Sorry, I got distracted by the secret alien moon base.
So wait a minute, that's all he said? Like, what's the 1?
Yes, he says it in passing. That's it.
Fucking unbelievable. 1 over T equal so frequency equals 1 over T. So the frequency is so really it's just frequency. We need
what frequency?
Yeah, we just have to figure out the
There's
frequency.
a few of them.
Well, and what part of the time? Is it the year? Like what do we talk? What is the time part?
I don't know. I'm not a science.
Well, I would say that space itself has a specific time. Because if you're going to time travel, you have to take a lot of things into account because you have to take space into account. Because if we go back in time 6 months at this spot, we're going to be floating in space and die
because of the Earth's orbit. Yeah.
So you have to be able to calculate not only space, but time, but space.
Yeah.
So that way we don't end up, dead.
But here's the thing, guys. We already know the rules of time travel, thanks to 2109 from season 4, episodes 7 through 10, the Dalston messages.
Dang, you're muted. So nobody heard it.
I'm actually not muted. I just didn't vocalize it.
You just went.
So back to that 1964 interview, yet again. George goes on to talk about how the energy, because remember, we're actually talking about integration before we got distracted by secret alien moon bases.
Yeah.
George talks about how the energy field created inside the integration can facilitate time travel.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Quoting George.
Jack, we've discovered this zone is subject to thought. Now, since time doesn't record events the way we do on calendars and clocks, you could only record an event by thinking of it. Now, theoretically, we believe we can take a videotape magnetic camera into the time zone and photograph Lincoln's Gettysburg Address or Caesar's armies marching or anything that's ever happened.
So that made sense.
Did it?
That's what he said. That's all I know.
Okay.
I don't know what a videotape magnetic camera is. So go figure. Anyway, as that interview... Oh, go ahead.
Is it maybe not. But you know how that guy claimed to have created a device that could look back in time, and the Vatican has it now? Is it related to that?
Who knows? Probably. Everything's related to the Vatican at the end of the day.
I want to look back in time.
Funny though that he talks about, we record an event by thinking about it because, of course, this is a deep cut and everybody's gonna relate to you. But if anyone's a Whovian and just finished the latest Doctor Who season, memories is time travel. It's a curious little thing there. Anyway, as that interview presses on, George cites an example where one of his colleagues in Santa Monica by the name of Charlie Arts actually manipulated this phenomenon to play TV shows no longer on the air, some of which were as old as 6 years. Remember, this is the 60s. We don't have reruns and we don't have home recording devices. So to see a show that's not on the air is not, you can't do that without a time travel.
An associate of ours in creating a magnetic coupler with this principle coupled in the Earth's magnetic field and played back TV shows from stations that aren't even in business anymore.
You mean an experiment has been done to bring out of the air television programs which have been and gone?
Been and gone.
That interviewer, Jack, he rightly points out how this should be a massive breakthrough sweeping the headlines. But George responds by explaining that, well, the Navy intervened, taking both Charlie and his research for their own purposes. So that's why we never heard of it.
Typical.
So George's story ends here. In 1978, he passed on February 9th from a heart attack in his hotel room. He, very ironically, died mere weeks before the integrations field was scheduled to be activated for the first time. This being 18 years after of it being constructed. He and his wife were planning to walk right through it, to be rejuvenated. He just died too soon.
Interesting, the timing of that death.
You're not the only one to say that. So, amusingly enough, his epitaph reads, "Birth through induction, death through short circuits."
No.
Wow.
So, in fact, the integration was just about finished. It was supposedly around 90%, and it was never finished.
Aww.
Nor could anybody else take over and finish it. The plans had been communicated strictly telepathically because the Venusians didn't want to risk them falling into the wrong hands. And keep in mind that this is the Cold War era. So that's especially something people would think about. We're all paranoid about the Russians getting it, is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Though, alternatively, contradictory, however you want to frame it, some of his disciples instead claimed that there were plans, but they were stolen by the government as part of a cover-up. All of George's proprietary electronics, his notes and his diagrams, much like Tesla's writings, vanished and to this day remain missing. So maybe they'll be found with Tesla's lost notes.
Yeah, the government's got it for sure.
Supposedly his FBI file also to this day remains classified.
The Montauk Project, when was that again? 80s?
I don't remember.
Montauk? Yeah.
I think so. So that would have been, well after this happened. So, I don't know. But also involved Tesla stuff. So So at this point, the buildings at Giant Rock are completely vacated. And for a while after, the buildings were being vandalized, and the Bureau of Land Management would finally step in and just bulldoze them. Fast forward to the years between 1978 and 1986. George's second wife, Doris Andrea Van Tassel, she took over leadership of the Ministry of Universal Wisdom. She leased the integration to a number of folks who would make it their personal residence, and in one case, would have made it into a disco. Another way to rejuvenate yourselves.
Fuck it, let's have fun.
Right?
Disco makes me feel so much younger.
Anyway, in 1986, she sold off the integration to try to pay off what were some staggering debts of both her own and the ministry's. So off the integration gets sold into new hands. 1987 to 1989, two individuals, Anil Canning and Diana Cushing, they bought the integration for $50,000. Remember, it originally cost $200,000 to build. They bought it for $50,000 so they could preserve it. So they led some seminars, some UFO sky watches, and they tried to continue the mission of researching the crossroads of science and religion. They cleaned it up, cleared out debris, planted some trees, tried to turn it into what they dubbed the desert oasis, if you will. They opened the integration to the public for the first time, and they kept doing so for a while, periodically. Jump ahead a decade, 1992. The entire region is rocked by a 7.3 magnitude earthquake. Which I gotta ask, is that a ley lines thing? Anyway,
California, though, there are so many earthquakes.
Earthquakes all the time.
I was gonna ask though, like when that happened, did the rock split then?
Hold that thought. You guys in your rock splitting, you've been all about the rock splitting since the beginning of the previous episode. So George's son and grandson have kind of kept on the tradition because they believe the government sabotaged the integration's free energy production, just like they sabotaged Tesla's free energy production.
Would not be surprised.
And here's the thing that you got to know. It's dangerous. It's dangerous to try to sabotage the integration because any miscalibration could, in fact, trigger an explosion so massive it will wipe out the entirety of Southern California.
Oh, is that all? Okay.
Yeah, so you really shouldn't screw around with the integration.
No pressure.
Bad government. But anyway, supposedly, since we're talking about government interlopers, at one point earlier on, supposedly the FBI actually secretly infiltrated George's budding UFO community, when those conventions were gearing up, because they believed the whole thing was Marxist. Alien communism, comrade.
Oh my gosh.
Well, no taxes, bro.
That's right. That was more alien libertarianism with our captain, right? We got some alien communism here as far as the government's concerned, and you cannot have alien communism. This is the Cold War, folks. No communism, alien or otherwise.
So is this where the disinformation starts coming in, like where they start like planning people in these conventions and like doing the disinformation campaigns?
Presumably. So I'm going to mention this quick and then move on because I don't have enough information on it, but I want to revisit this later because I'm really curious. all three of George's daughters married disciples of Yogananda. I do not know who this is.
Yeah.
And I want to know who this is because that sounds like a story all unto itself. But apparently he lived nearby and he helped build the dome. But yeah, so all three daughters were married disciples of this guy, whom I know nothing about. So we'll check that out in the future. All right. Since you guys are so excited about what happens to this rock, February 19th and February 20th of the year 2000.
In the year 2000.
So I am again going to butcher a name here, but Sri Nath Devi, founder of Eagle Wings of Enlightenment in southern and south central Los Angeles, she performed what's called a long dance ceremony at Giant Rock with a group of healers because Sri had divined that the earth was about to go through a violent upheaval unless they stepped in to intervene. Remember last episode, I mentioned way in the beginning that there's this Native American shaman who had a prophecy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Legend was that a clean break right down the middle of Giant Rock would signal the mother's displeasure with humanity, hearkening our end.
I got chills, dude. I'm freaking out.
But alternatively, if the mother decided to answer their prayers instead, she would crack the side of the boulder to relieve pressure on the tectonic plates. You know, because cracking pieces off of boulders totally affects tectonic plates. It's science.
It's just a sign, maybe, that it was done.
Sure, why not? But those ancient tribes aren't around anymore to keep that ceremony going, and now the earth would soon react quite violently. So in steps Sri and her crew. After the ceremony, after this long dance, Sri and company, they then went over to the integration and did some more dancing. They danced around a fire from sunset to 3 a.m., dancing, quote unquote, until the last person fell from exhaustion. Not quite 24 hours later, they met her at her house to talk about the events when, bam, lightning strikes and a ball of light flew through the house from north to south. And then, bam, it struck again not long afterward, and this ball of lightning went east to west through the house. This, of course, meant the light balls were honoring the 4 cardinal directions to show the mother's approval. That's her way of saying, you did a good job. I won't kill you all.
Okay.
Thanks, Mom.
And then, not long after, a massive 1/8 size piece of giant rock broke off the morning of February 21st, 2000 to reveal white granite within. Thankfully for us, only a small bit fell off. So we're okay for now.
Yeah, for now.
So that was 2 hours before the whole lightning balls thing happened. That piece of rock just randomly fell off.
That's crazy.
So Srinath Devi concluded that this meant that Mother Earth was, quote unquote, opening her arms to us, cracking open her heart for the world to see. By the way, this all ties in with something that they call the Great Experiment and the Great Shift, which is another whole other thing, whole other topic to itself. So that's another rabbit hole, folks. But it's definitely a sign, if you're to ask the convention goers, from the aliens.
Oh, okay.
From Mother Earth, from the aliens, take your pick.
Okay, Mother Earth.
So meanwhile, the local High Desert Star newspaper, they instead attributed the whole breaking off of the rock to natural causes, including a 4.4 earthquake that centered in Loma Linda that was just 2 hours prior. Nah, could have been that.
It released the pressure.
It wasn't the earthquake. Come on. Also, remember talking about Frank blowing stuff up and then a bunch of people having festivals with bonfires right under the rock? So there were a lot of bonfires under that rock over the decades of those festivals that heated it up over and over and over again. In fact, I'll share a little picture here. Again, will appear to our socials for everyone else. You can clearly see like charred black sections of the rock where all of that happened. So the rock's been under a lot of abuse over the years. Just saying. Also, side note, if you're looking at that picture and you look at the bottom, you see that little gray patch. That's the entrance to Frank's and then later George's home, which has since been covered by a concrete slab.
Oh.
So that's where you went into the underground home. So the next year, 2001, two dirt bikers, remember this is out in the middle of nowhere desert. Two dirt bikers are out there and they are just out there dirt biking as you do. They run into this random woman painting the entire surface of that boulder a bright magenta with an airless generator powered sprayer thing. She's basically spray painting the boulder with magenta. She told them, this is my way of expressing the rock's pain. The rock is bleeding from the splits. She was never identified or heard from again. So I just love that in the middle of all this stuff happening, that just a random nameless woman pops up, paints it, and then that's that. So as we get closer to today, in 2006, you asked last episode of the conventions are still going. In 2006, a group of Van Tassel's followers returned to host a one-day retro UFO convention. Contactees were given special treatment at this convention, where they were adorned in silver hats and cloaks.
Oh,
I guess that's how you graduate from your UFO contacts.
I don't know. I mean, is that are those hats made of tinfoil?
I don't know. I just know they were silver. All of it was silver.
And those were Heather's graduation colors.
Yep.
Right.
And here's the thing. I'm making these jokes. I believe in aliens and extraterrestrial beings. Don't get me wrong.
Well, also at this retro UFO con, a space guru by the name of Arjuna hummed quote unquote celestial sounds and blew into Tibetan, how do you say Tibet? Tibetan? A horn from Tibet, while visitors rested on beds and cushions. So this is some artsy stuff going on. Professors and a bunch of other lecturers would cover topics including the likes of Aleister Crowley and his Scarlet Women, which I don't know anything about, but apparently they may have at one point torn the fabric of space and time, just by the way.
Yeah.
Crowley doing Crowley, I guess. And another topic that they covered was a portal in Antarctica that leads to underground reptilian alien cities.
Gosh, Antarctica again.
And reptilians. Is that a connection? Is that connection back to the Denver airport?
Oh, you mean season 2, episode 12, the Denver International Airport? Yes, it is.
Ding.
The lizard people that we also talked about in season 1, episode 4, Laughs, Lush, and Lizard People of the Fourth Dimension.
Ooh.
Ding.
Another guest was Michael, the Universal Kabbalist, aka Orion Starseed, who donned silver and purple robes with a white wig to tell everyone how aliens had elevated him to a higher level of consciousness. He said, and I quote, "I have strong intuitive knowledge of my many life journeys in the Orion system. I am one of the many who have chosen to visit Earth at this juncture to help rise the light of energies of those souls who have found their inner lights and to help prepare them for the ascension of the Earth." In his previous life, he served in Vietnam and then came home to dive into alcohol, drugs, and pal around with a biker gang of outlaws. As you do.
As you do.
Yeah.
But his life changed when he suffered a heart attack and then was visited by aliens. Or to quote him, "I was snorting drugs and having a great time, not a care in the world, until they showed up."
And by they, he means aliens.
That's a great quote. "I was snorting drugs and having a great time."
There I was, coked out of my mind. And then E.T. comes walking in and everything just changes.
And Captain Aura Rains showed up.
Right? Wow.
Yeah.
Another guest at this retro UFO con, Hans Peterman, author of the book Gravity, Matter, and Space Travel. He gave a 2-hour lecture on secret cities below the surface of Earth and Mars, an ancient interplanetary war, try saying that 3 times fast, Martian colonization of Earth, and the links between the pyramids built by the citizens of Atlantis, mind you, and the Cheyenne Mountain Bunker in Colorado.
Wow.
You get all that?
Sure. That's a lot of connections.
Totally.
If this were a drinking game, we would be under the table long before now.
We need one of those boards with like all the string
With the
connecting
red strings,
everything.
yes.
Yeah.
So according to Peterman, aliens live among us, but usually stay invisible given they exist in different space-time dimensions than we do. That makes sense.
Okay.
To quote Peterman, they coexist with us, but only at specific frequencies. Now you see them, now you don't. Peterman had, in fact, himself visited Antarctica, where he knew from said visit to Antarctica where the secret entrance to the underground city was. He also explained that the Bermuda Triangle is definitely an interdimensional portal, officially solving that one for us. Thanks, Peterman.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks.
So it makes you wonder if something similar happened to Amelia Earhart. You know, like we talked about in season 3, episode 15, what happened to Amelia Earhart?
That was my episode. Oh,
All right.
ding.
So let's bring this sucker up to a close, because God knows this is a long episode, folks, ain't it? So let's talk about today, 2000 to now. Enter the Carl sisters, Joanne, Nancy, and Patty. They bought the integration in 2000 and are the owners to this day. I don't want to make too much fun of these three. They actually sound like I watched a few videos of them talking. They sound really cool. They're like all about promoting peace on Earth and stuff. So, you know, no shade. But they had been, you know, a little while ago, I was talking to like kind of the other owners that the integration passed through. They had been helping the previous owners restore it since 1987. And since then, they had kind of gradually just fallen in love with the place. The three sisters, they didn't know the history, you know, George Van Tassel and all that. They just fell in love with the sound and energy situation that they experienced when in the building. Mm-hmm. They, and by they, I at least mean the one sister in the video I watched, they now claim that were the integration functioning, it could indeed potentially bend time, cause stuff to disappear, or dematerialize. Sound familiar? Did we learn nothing about making things vanish and dematerialize from season 1, episode 14, the Philadelphia experiment?
The Philadelphia. Damn it, he's too fast. Dang.
But, you know, I say screw it. Someone's just got to turn it on already. They've been teasing us since the 70s about turning this thing on, and somebody needs to turn it on and show us what it does.
Mm-hmm.
Come on.
Do it.
Teasing us for too long, guys. Anyway, the ladies created a sound bath for the integration sound chamber. And this is kind of interesting. So I will share another picture to you guys and to our social media with the rest of the world. So they created a sound bath.
Oh.
It features 20 quartz crystal bowls. That is another picture, one of the sisters. So each bowl is keyed to body chakras, where, quote unquote, sound is nutrition for the nervous system. So this is going into what you were asking about last episode, Christina. Mm-hmm. So some visitors claim to have experienced altered states of consciousness during the sound bath. So multiple people that I've watched and listened to have said that if you go to like the dead center of that second floor, right there under the dome, the effect of the geometry of the building, it creates this intense sound experience because of the geometry of it all. Like just really unique, really surreal sound that you're going to experience if you stand in that one spot, right smack in the middle. So the New York Times covered it in 2014, and they described the experience as being, quote unquote, inside a musical instrument.
Oh, that's cool. And
another quote taken from the Visit Joshua Tree website, it's kindergarten for grown-ups in a sound sphere. But to be fair, from what I gathered from watching videos and kind of, you know, as best as you can hear through a video, right? But it does sound super relaxing. Yeah, it's probably really cool to chill in there, regardless of what you think about vibrations and frequencies and stuff. So, and of course, that while the integration is still there and they're running it now, that subterranean residence has long been inaccessible because, as I showed you, it's filled in with concrete.
Mm-hmm.
But you can go to the integration today and see a 35 to 40-minute performance of those quartz crystal singing bowls. They offer public and private sound baths. And then there's the balance of the hour. So you can integrate to the sound of the chamber and relax to ambient music. Hundreds of people visit the integration every week. Apparently 20 to 30,000 visitors per year.
Wow.
There's also a gift shop. So around 2018, 2019, the National Park Service actually officially listed the integration in the National Register of Historic Places. And today, not right there at the integration, but nearby, there's this, and I'll share a picture for those of you artsily inclined. There's this huge sculpture at Mojave Moon Ranch nearby titled Transmission. It was created by the renowned artist Daniel Popper. It's a fun little
That's
FYI.
cool.
It's some cool looking art that ties into this whole thing. And today's integration, their website for the modern site, if you go to that website today, it actually includes an archive of all of the proceedings of the College of Universal Wisdom from 1953 to 1979. So go over there and dig in.
Wow.
So we come to our close of this episode and our season. But all this talk of George Van Tassel, the telepathic communication, the vibrations, and all that jazz it's reminded me of something. It's like what have I been, these long episodes I've done these past two, what am I forgetting to mention? It's like been on the tip of my tongue. We're talking all this stuff. So like there's all those aliens George talked to in 1952, right? Like we had all that list of names. But if you go back to the actual history, like I kind of glanced over it because there's so much. But if you go back into George's books where he actually talks about, dictates all of those messages, of all that list of alien names, there is one name that comes up a lot more than all the other names. And it's this particular alien he's a leader among a bunch of godlike aliens who came to Earth to warn us of our penchant for self-destruction. But that is a whole other topic for next season, where we're going to have to go back and revisit an old pal, Hail Ashtar.
Ashtar.
Hail Ashtar! Ow! Ashtar!
Oh, Ashtar. Damn it. The whole time I kept saying Hail Ashtar, and I thought he was going to fake me out again. And this time, I'm the fool. Well, all right. Okay, kids. Well, that's season 4. We'll be taking a bit of a longer hiatus. We'll be back in October with season 5. Keep
on our anniversary.
Yeah.
This whole podcast started in October. I have not been able to speak straight these past 2 episodes. October.
YouTuber.
When we started our podcast, October.
YouTuber. Yeah, so keep an eye on our socials, and we will be setting things out the closer we get to the premiere, just to remind you guys that we're still here, and we have a whole new season coming, bringing you thrills, delights, fears, chills, and a bunch of weird shit. But above all, Hail Ashtar.
Hail Ashtar.
Ow! Ashtar!
Wait, we are planning a live gaming session on Twitch. So
Also that.
Keep an eye on our Instagram, Facebook, whatever
etc.
post dates.
Yes.
Our socials, you modern people.
Yes.
Our Insta Facebook grammars on X.
That'll be during the break, so there will be something you can interact with us.
That's right. But we want to also say thank you so much to everybody who has tuned in throughout this entire season. Thank you for continuing to go along this journey with us. And like I said, we look forward to continuing this next season. Until then,
Bye, babies.
Hello, sure.
Thank you for listening to Little Podcast of Horrors. If you like this episode, please like, subscribe, and share. Got a true tale of the unexplained? Send us an email at littlepodcasthorrors@gmail.com or visit our website at littlepodcastofhorrors.com. If you'd like to support the podcast, join our Patreon. For $2 a month, you get access to our private Discord server where we chat, game, and you'll get access to episode extras. Don't want to commit to a monthly subscription? Make a one-time donation through Spotify or buy us a coffee. All donations keep the lights on for the show and help us fund future on-location visits to haunted places. Links are in the episode description. Want to learn witchy stuff? Take a course with Bearbridge Academy. You can also hire a witch or psychic at the Otso Salon. Be sure to use code LittlePodcast for 20% off Bearbridge courses and Otso services. Thanks for listening, my loves. Bye!